This is a D6 generation pip. One of those dots on the side of a six-sided die. Yeah, a pip. A short pip. Little something. About anything gaming related. Sometimes featuring Craig, sometimes featuring Russ. We'll see what's coming up today.
Hey everyone, Russ here. Welcome to another Pip. Excited to be talking to you today about a topic I'm not really sure we've ever shared or done on the show before. The D6 generation is kind of scared to think about it. We started back in 2008, so it's been a long time, and I don't know that we've ever covered this topic. So, and the reason I wanted to talk about organizing and displaying your nerdy stuff. So your nerdy stuff. So sort of like board games, miniature games, things like that. I thought this might be a great topic because I've just gone through the process myself. So actually, my oldest daughter, Rose, who longtime listeners will know, I've talked about my daughter several times in the shows. We've gone through the different stages of her and her sister growing up and all the different games we played together and our role-playing campaigns. Well, now we're at the stage where she's going off to college. She actually just finished her freshman year. And so now she's moving on to her sophomore year. But she was very fortunate and she got this internship. And so it's going to require that it's pretty amazing. We're super proud of her, not to overshare, but she got this internship as a software developer, an amazing company. And they've offered her a full 4-year internship while she's in college, working full-time over the summer and then part-time during the school year, obviously to finish her degree. She's super excited about it. Of course, we're crazy proud of her. But what this does mean, unfortunately, is it means it's time for her to basically leave the house. Now, I know when kids go to college, they leave the house, but you kind of expect your kids to return in the summer and live with you in the summer. So you don't, obviously, for just 3 months, and then plus they come back for the holidays. So you don't really, remove their rooms until usually the kids are done with college, or maybe even beyond that for sentimental reasons or whatever else. However, with Rose basically going to be living in Milwaukee, which is where her school is. She goes to the Milwaukee School of Engineering. Shout out to Mosey and the Pirates out there. I think they're called Raiders, actually, is there. Although it's an engineering school, so their sporting teams are, it's an engineering school. Let's put it that way. But so here's the thing, because she's going to be out there all the time and pretty much living out there year round, just visiting for the holidays and stuff. She came back and she's like, Mom, you don't need to keep my room anymore. I'm taking a lot of stuff to put in my apartment. And, it doesn't make sense to me. She's very practical. It doesn't make sense to me that you're going to have all this space in the house being used for this. Cause our home is pretty modest size, right? It's not a very big house. So she was like, and Mom, I want you, and my wife's office is next to where I was sitting. And we've been obviously working remotely like everybody else all year. And so we were very noisy with each other. I'd be on the phones all the time for my work. She'd be on the phone a lot for her work. And because we're both downstairs, we kind of hear each other all the time. And she's like, so Mom, why don't you take my room and I'll help you? She was home for 2 weeks between school and when her job kicks off. And she's like, hey, I'm home for 2 weeks. I got nothing else to do. Why don't I help you, Mom, redo your room? Redo my room as your room. So my daughter jumps in and does exactly that and helps my wife paint the walls, move all the furniture upstairs. She even does a really good job with wire management and everything. So it looks super cool. My wife's ecstatic. She's in the upper part of the house now. I can be yammering on all day on my calls. Doesn't bother her at all. And so I'm fine with all that. And I think it's great. And I'm super excited for her and for my wife and everything's great. And then my daughter comes back downstairs and she's like, so Mom, what are you doing with your old office downstairs in the basement? Because we're in the basement. It's a finished basement. And my wife had a little office in the corner, separate room. And then I was sort of in the corner of the family room in a nook between my painting desk, which also doubled as my work desk, which also doubled at my computer station. So I'm kind of like crammed in this nook. And don't get me wrong, it was a cool nook. I had like racks of paints on the wall and pegboard up there with all my gear, but it was kind of like hobby nook and work nook. Because, when it was originally designed, it was mostly hobby nook. So I would go to work. But now that everybody works remotely, it's work nook and hobby nook. And my daughter's like, if you moved into Mom's old office, you could, do it up like an office. And I'm like, huh. And my wife's like, look, if it gets you out of the family room, if you can just get everything in the family room into this other room, you can do whatever you want with it. It's your space. Knock yourself out. I'm like, ooh, really? So I've never had a place before. And so my daughter and I are talking about this, and I never had a place before to really display my games and other nerdy things I've collected over the years. And so they're usually crammed in like this little walk-in closet down in the basement that I've sort of got as a game rack closet, but it's, it's behind a door, it's closed. It's obviously like most people's miniature and game collection. It's overflowing. It's very hard to move in there. And I just keep sticking things on the walls in there of like different things I've collected, but it doesn't really look good. No one goes in there and, and it's a mess. So it's just a place to store stuff. And I go through and I wade through there, pull the game I want to play the day and do it. And my daughter's like, why don't you redo this space? So, and why don't you do it as a gaming space, but also do a corner that's work. And so we thought, well, we have to have one wall that's a Zoom wall, right? So that when you're on a call, the area behind you looks solid and professional, but the rest of the room could reflect all your fun stuff, all your hobbies. And so when you're sitting at your desk working, when you look up in a moment of pensiveness, you look at a bunch of cool games and stuff. And I'm like, geez, that would be awesome. So I started thinking about this, and she and I helped. And she's got I don't have a good eye for design. Like, it's not my thing, right? It's just not where I am. She's got a pretty good eye for design. And so she starts thinking about it, and she's like, look, so as we did this, we started going through the different options of, the kind of furniture and the kind of things you would do to display all this stuff. And then I thought, as we did this, and we did it over Memorial Day weekend. So it was just really a week ago I did this. And as we did this over Memorial Day weekend, I thought this might be kind of nice to share with our listeners, because I did go through a bit of a process here, and, everybody's different. So, I don't expect you guys to like my taste of how I did this. But you might, just going through the process of what we did together, my daughter and I, it might be interesting to some of you out there to see what we used and what approaches we had. And you can take the parts that you think might appeal to you, and you can throw the parts away that you think are kind of lame. So take what you can from it. Now we'll talk first about how we were thinking about decorating it. So I had sort of three. It's a small room too. I want to say the room is, 15 by 15. It's roughly a square, and it's not huge. I want to say it's like maybe a little more than, I feel like it's bigger than 10 by 10, but smaller than 15 by 15, something like that. So it's not huge, but it's pretty big, big enough, right? For one person to sit, plus have some wall space. And there's a bunch of little doors. They're actually each, I feel like a dungeon master. You enter a small 12 by 12 foot room with 4 exits. So when you come in, there's one entrance, the main entrance from the family room. There's a door that goes into the washroom. There's another door that goes into my walk-in closet, which is previously just full of so much gaming stuff that you can't really get in there. And then there's another tiny closet that's half size that we store like old photo albums and that kind of stuff. So it's really 2 closets, 1 laundry room, and then the main exit back into the house, right? So this is the room. And there's one like really long, full 10-foot wall, 15-foot wall. And the rest of them, I feel like 15 is long, but 10, it's taller than me. So anyway, sorry. So this is the space we're working with. My wife, when she made it for her office, already painted it pretty cool. The carpet's nice. The walls are beige, but she did the one wall a different color thing. So the back wall's just like sort of like maroony red, which I really actually like. So it's got this beige maroon thing going on, which long time listeners know were the color of my towel. So I'm kind of like, I like this color scheme. So I'm already on the colors. And then the question came, okay, so what are you going to do here? And we started talking about different options. And my daughter was kind of like, you should display your games. And she said, because if you displayed your games, but also doubled it as game storage, because you'd have more space, you could then make the closet, the walk-in closet, truly a walk-in closet, have it store less games in there. And that would give you the ability to turn the walk-in closet into a useful space. And then out here, you could display your games. Now, this immediately appealed to me. And so I said, well, that's neat. I've never really thought about doing that sort of in like a space you sit in before. It sounds kind of neat. And I've seen obviously lots of people do this, right? You see the pictures all the time online. I have several friends who've done this before. And actually a few years ago, I had backed a Kickstarter project called Box Throne, which was exactly this. It was a pretty cool organizer for putting board games on shelves. And what Box Throne did, Box Throne's still around, by the way, you can still order it. And in fact, for this project, I looked at Box Throne as an option, because now what Box Throne does is, after the Kickstarter, I was in their first one, and I got a pretty good size set of Box Throne stuff. you could then order more. And what they do is every quarter, I think they do an ordering window and everybody orders and then they deliver it about 2 months later. So I was looking at the box throne stuff and I'd already ordered white box throne and it was in the family room. And my wife didn't love it in the family room because it does show games, which I like, but she didn't really necessarily want games hanging out in the family room. So we had this thing where I had to bring that in here. So I thought the box throne was going to look good in this room. But as I started pricing box throne out for the rest of the room, because the cool part was that at the end of May was like another ordering window. So the timing was perfect. If I wanted to order a bunch more box throne, I could. And I like box throne for a lot of reasons. You can adjust the height of the wire shelves. And I'll show you more about box throne in just a minute and talk more about box throne because I am using it. But I've decided to use the box throne in the corner of the room and really use it as sort of my little hobby area, the place where I painted. More about that in a second. Because the reason box throne didn't become the de facto game sort of sharing and storage system, game display and storage system for the entire room, was when I started pricing it, it was there were two problems. One, it was pricey. So to get box throne to really fill one of these walls, not even the full size wall, just one of the smaller walls in this room, was going to be another $500 per throne. And then if you got like some extra things, and I don't mean just per like column, but there's the way box throne works. And if you go to their website, you can see this, but I actually have a picture of it coming up. So by the way, one thing I wanted to mention here is I'm doing a little hybrid thing today. I'm actually doing an audio episode of the D6 Generation Pip here for you guys, but also I'm sharing video on it right now. My screen is currently paused in the middle of my video, a shot of actually what I actually used for in the corner. More about that in a second. But if you're a patron, my language is messed up today. If you're a patron of the D6 Generation, you can go watch the video version of this over on our Patreon webpage and see pictures of all this stuff. So if you're curious what it looks like, how I did it, it's all there. Right now, there's a still in the video, but I'm going to start going through the video in a minute. In fact, why don't I go back to so I can find my box throne section here. Yeah, I'm sort of fast forwarding through the video. Here we go. So I don't know if I zoomed out on the box. There we go. I'm going to go right to a good spot here. So this spot here is pretty good shot of the box throne. Now I've modified it slightly. So what box throne looks like is it's these metal frames where then you put wire racks into it. And they have several colors. I chose white. And then these wire racks are adjustable through a wide variety of pegs. So what's cool about this is you can get them exactly the right height. So the idea behind box throne is you never actually stack your games. You have this very thin wire rack between each box. That allows you to pull a game out of box throne and the games don't collapse. So it's not like you have a giant stack of them, right? Or they're crushing under their own weight, or you have to rearrange them whenever you want to take a game out. You're going to slide them in and out. Because you can adjust the height of these things, you can get exactly the combos for your games. Now, if you're looking at my picture, you'll notice these sort of square, tall, about 3 feet high, and sort of like about 12-inch, 13-inch square from the top box thrones, like 3 feet high. These things, you can buy them in sets and you can stack them and screw them together. And you can also put them side by side. But they also have wire racks that allow you that are very long and allow you to spread the box throne out. So you can have two towers with a bunch of games on racks in the middle. So if you check out Box Throne's website, Box Throne, I think it's boxthrone.com, or if you Google it, you'll find it. They have all kinds of cool configurations, a lot of cool different colors, all kinds of accessories that go on this thing. It's really cool. And I like it. Don't think because I didn't use Box Throne everywhere, I didn't like it. I loved it. But as I mentioned, it's pricey. And I had seen a lot of people using Kallax. Now, Kallax, and I'm going to go back to a Kallax picture here for a minute. So I'm going to zoom back, and I think I've got a full shot of my Kallax collection, or maybe I don't. Let me see. I'm just going back through my video. Oh, here we go. That's pretty good there. Did I not take a full picture? Anyway, so Kallax is actually an IKEA product. So I love IKEA. IKEA's got a lot going for it. It's affordable. It's quality. You do have to assemble it yourself and pick it up yourself. But you save a lot of money there. So what I discovered was I had some, you see a lot on various websites and people talk about this. And then you see also a lot of my friends use Kallax from IKEA. And the interesting thing about Kallax from IKEA is it's basically a piece of furniture with a bunch of cubes. And these cubes are about, I'm looking at them now, you can kind of see in the picture here, they're not quite 12 by 12, but they're something like that. And you can buy bits of furniture with different amounts of cubes in them. So for example, you can buy 4 by 4 cubes, or, 2 by 2. So 2 cubes, like a square of them, 2 cubes on top of 2 cubes. And again, each cube is about, a foot high or so, plus or minus a little bit. And then you've got also a 2x4 arrangement, and they go all the way up to like 5x5 is the biggest. Now 5x5 is very large. It fills over, it's like 72 inches across and it's square. So it's 72 inches high. So it takes up a good chunk of that large wall. And we realized that while Kallax, just to cover one small section of one wall, about half a wall, was going to be $500, and that was without any accoutrements, we realized accoutrement, as Craig would say, the large wall, I realized I could get the large wall and some more boxes, more Kallax going around the corner, and I could pick it in varying heights to kind of make it look descending. And I could do all of this for like $300. So for $300, I could cover an entire wall with Kallax, right? And so I'm like, and by the way, it's Kallax. So it was much more affordable. Now, the other interesting thing about this is, because you get them in varying heights. And by the way, you can rearrange the box throne any way you want too. So it's 6 of one up does the other, except there are a couple, I would say box throne has unique advantages that Kallax doesn't have, and Kallax has unique advantages that box throne doesn't have. Number one, Kallax advantage, price, much more affordable, right? Now, box throne is a little more flexible. You can make it wider, you can make it narrowable. However, box throne, the way the wire racks work, it's really designed for all the games to be flat, right? Which honestly, if we're all being like super protective of our games and keeping them in the best possible condition, having your games on their back flat is the right call, right? So, and it's a more practical way you can store more games, right? So nothing wrong with that. And I've seen a lot of folks, when they put their pictures of their Kallax up, they have their games all stacked on top of themselves. And in that 12 by 12 cube, many games will fit in there. I think it's more than 12 by 12. Don't hold me to that. Now I'm going to actually want to measure them in just a second. So I'll get back to you in a second on that. You can go Google Kallax or you can go to the IKEA website and look at it too, and they'll have the actual dimensions there. But basically, they're bigger than 12 by 12. I want to say they're a little bit bigger than that. And you'll see in the picture here, because a game like, let's put it this way, Blood Rage, right, can fit into one of these cubes on its side. So standing up with the art facing out can go right into one of these cubes with about another inch above an inch to the side, right? Or a game like Shadows over Camelot or Arcadia Quest or Forgotten Waters. All these games could be on their side facing out. So you see the box art in one of these cubes, but they don't fully fill the cube. Castle of Mad King Ludwig, another one that's on its side facing out. Disney Villainous, what I did was I slid the main game on its back, but then I had 2 of the expansions facing up, which perfectly fills the cube in, so you get to see the cool silhouettes of the villain. So what I realized with Kallax was, and you can kind of see where I'm going with this, that part of this is I want more place to store my games, but part of this is also I kind of want to enjoy and present the games as art, right? I know this is a little weird, but the box art in so many games is so cool. And I just felt like it'd be cool to display the games, top out, on their side, top out. I know this is not ideal for the components. I know it's not ideal for everything inside of them, but some of the games can do this quite nicely with no real damage being done. And a lot of us store our games on their spines anyway, and just shove them all, in horizontally. But I thought having them face out would be pretty cool. So that's what we decided to do. And I'm going to walk you through my video now if I put this together. Now, assembling the Kallax, a few tricks about this. I'm going to walk you through some of the things we went through. So let me take you to the front of my little video here, and I'll walk you through it. But I'll also try to describe it so that if you're not, if you are, not having access to the Patreon, you're not a patron, you can't see this, I'll try to walk you through it. So I ended up buying 3 Kallax sets. I bought, as you can see in this picture here, I bought a 2x2. So it's short. It's maybe, I want to say 3 feet off the ground in a square situation with 4 cubes inside of it. And as you can see from this picture, one of the things I love about the Kallax is that you can get pretty big games in there. So for example, in this picture, you can see that I've got Dice Throne, right? Not to be confused with Box Throne. Dice Throne's that amazing game I've talked about on the show before, where you got these really cool. Anyway, I back both Kickstarter. So I have Dice Throne Season 1 and Season 2 with the flaming dice. They look like giant books, massive books, but they fit perfectly into a Kallax cube side by side. And you can see in my picture the giant flaming dice just showing off there. And if you look below, you can see Dune sitting there, but you can also see what looks like another giant book. That's Dice Throne Adventures. I backed their Kickstarter. That's one that turns it into a co-op dungeon crawl. That's there as well. So you can see in the 4x4, and by the way, I'm not done setting this all up. So this is just what I did after the first getting it assembled last weekend at Memorial Day weekend. And then I've been slowly working at getting my other games out and doing this. So this is not by any means done. This is just sort of where I'm at the moment. And I thought I'd share it with you to kind of see what's going on here. So what you can see here is that in this 4x4, I've experimented with a couple games facing out, so you can see their art. And I've got a lot of games face all on their sides. So in this one, they're all on their spines, they're on their sides, they're on their backs. They're kind of traditionally how people put stuff in Calyx, right? So it's kind of not showing off the art as much as it just stores a lot of games in there. So you can see I can store quite a few games in this low one. And I did that A, to experiment, but B, in the low one, it's not actually facing the door. So if you look at this picture, to the right, you're going to see there's more Calyx with a lot of games facing out. Those are facing the door when you enter. So this little side 4x4, people don't see it. So it's, I mean, you do see it when you walk by, but you don't see it from the hallway or when you enter the room. So it's less of a sort of a presentation thing. So I thought I'd just jam some games in there, although I'll probably rearrange that more as time goes on. You can also see I got my little chest set sitting on there, which is also nice. So it's also got a nice little place you can put stuff on top there. Now, if you're wondering what that little ring on top there is, this little oval ring, that is a Sonos speaker charger. I have a Sonos Move. You can carry it around. So anyway, and then the next piece of Calyx we got that 4x4. And I do recommend when you start building these things from IKEA, start with the smaller ones first so you can learn the basics. The good part is pretty much all Calyx assembles exactly the same. And it's actually, I built a lot of IKEA furniture. My daughter's got an entire bedroom full of IKEA stuff, beds, dressers, you name it. I've got huge bureaus downstairs of IKEA. Calyx is probably one of the easiest IKEA builds I've ever done. So if you've heard horror stories of IKEA builds, or you watch an amazing race failing at building IKEA, don't worry. Calyx, very, very easy. I would recommend a couple of things, though. Whenever you're building furniture, I like to do a little extra work. So I always put a little glue on the screws, especially if they're in very critical joints, which will help keep the gaps tight when you screw things together. Another trick there, if you don't like messing with glue or it's going to make a mess, I use carpenter's glue usually, by the way. If that's going to make you a mess, you put a little bit on the screw threads. My dad taught me this trick. Then you screw them in, and it just makes it that much tighter. But another thing you can do is plumber's tape. So plumber's tape is available from your local hardware store or do-it-yourself store. It is a white, and it's called tape, but it's not sticky. It's just this white, sort of like silicone wrap, and it looks like a piece of tape. And you wrap it around. Normally, you wrap it around the threads of pipes when you're screwing them together, so the water doesn't leak out. But you can also wrap it around screw threads, so you put screws in and also make things tight. That's a very handy trick if you've had to unscrew a screw from a hole and re-screw it in, and you're having trouble getting bite because maybe the thread stripped a little bit or something. Another handy trick there. But I do something like that here to kind of keep things nice and tight. So I would recommend for your Calyx, I would do that. And I would also put a little glue, the Calyx separator pieces, the pieces in the interior that join together, they're held in by pegs. Now, everything else is screwed together. The pegs aren't going anywhere. But I also put a little glue there as well, just to keep things nice and tight. More about the reason that's important later if you decide to get a little adventurous. So there's my 4x4 Calyx cube there with all the games on their side and their back. And then, as you can see, I'm going to pan up here, and I'm going to show you the next piece of Calyx, which is, you'll see as it pans up, there's next to the 4x4 and kind of with parts of it behind it, there is a 2x4 snugged in right behind it. Now, the 2x4 is vertical, right? So there's a 2x2 on the floor, and now there's a 2x4. And the 2x4 now is the same height on the bottom as the 2x2, but then above it, there's 4 more cubes. So now it looks like this whole thing is rising up as your line of sight moves around the room from the shorter one to this next taller one. And to the right of that, you can see the large one, the 5x5. We'll get to the 5x5 in a second. Now, building the 2x4. I'm going to mess these up a lot. You're going to see some sort of display choices I made. And one of the things I decided to do as I was talking to my daughter about this and working through this was, I'm not using this space to maximize game storage. I still have that walk-in closet in the back, right? So the walk-in closet, that's where I'm going to have, a good number of games stacked. What I'd like to do with my Calyx, though, is actually display, as I mentioned earlier, display that game art and display some other things that some nerdy stuff that I've collected, maybe some some centerpiece miniatures I've painted, maybe some other collectibles I've gotten. As you can see in this picture here, you can see the feet of a giant Lego Voltron my daughter bought for me a couple years ago and we put together. So of course, Voltron's awesome. We were watching the Netflix series and we got all excited and she bought me for my birthday and we assembled it together. It was a fun project. So I got a giant Lego Voltron in the corner of the room, which is awesome. So you got spots for putting like pieces of your collection there. You'll also notice when I had the smaller games, one of the things I thought about too was Calyx is so popular. I was talking to my wife about this. Calyx is sort of like the Honda Civic of furniture, meaning that if you know anything about cars, you know that Honda Civics, very popular cars, are very affordable. Everybody tweaks them out, right? Honda Civics is like a million different customized options for those things. People go crazy with them. Well, Calyx is the same because so many people use Calyx. It's sort of affordable and versatile. Like you can put it on its side, throw a cushion on it. Now it's a bench. You know, you can do all kinds of stuff with this. They also sell doors and drawers for Calyx. So these cubes can be doors and drawers, which is handy for gamers because I thought about this. I was like, well, what I should do, I should buy a couple inserts that are drawers because then I could throw like, you know, some half-built miniatures in there and stuff like that. And I did actually buy one of the drawer inserts. I ended up using it elsewhere in the house though, because I realized as I was doing this, then I was also thinking like, maybe I'd want a cabinet door so I could put a bunch of those little tiny, you know, little mini games, like the not just two-player party games, decks of cards, like those aren't going to display well in a Calyx cube. So I thought those might be better in a drawer or behind a little cabinet door. But then I realized, wait a minute, the games are the doors, right? Stick with me here. So what I did was a couple different options. One of them, as you can see here, you can put a stack of little games and then maybe decorate it with something. So you can see here, I have a plastic sipper that I bought on my last trip to Disney World, Spike the Bee. It's a funny inside family joke that I like Spike the Bee. Anyway, Spike the Bee is this little Disney bee. And he shows up at the Epcot Food and Wine Festival. But in any case, Spike's there, Garden Festival. So Spike's there. But what I did was next to Spike, behind Spike, is a bunch of little games. So I've got my little bunch of two-player games. I got like Diamonds back there. I got Dungeon Run, all these little small game boxes, just a little stack. And Spike's sitting in front. And they're kind of like, you know, kitty cornered in there, just kind of look neat. So that's there. You can see down below that I have the game Role Player standing on its edge, but I've also got it tilted back a little bit. And next to that, a few years ago, my wife gave me these sort of really cool sort of marble D6 dice set that just sort of, you wouldn't really ever roll them. They're more for displaying. And since Role Player is a game about rolling D6s, I put this giant sort of marble D6 die along with its smaller D6s next to it to kind of accent it. So what I soon thought about was like, wait a minute, I can take things that I've collected and put them next to games that match the theme, right? Which I thought was going to be kind of fun. And then back to my games being doors thing. Check this out. So I'm panning up here. You can see a little bit better. You can see the overall top. Now I'm going to come back to the top in a second here. We're going to talk about the top in just a minute. But you can see that I've got in this cabinet a lot of games facing out, but I've also got some non-game things floating around in there. But one of the things I also figured out, remember I mentioned earlier, the games can be the doors. So you'll see here, I've got the box from the miniature game, A Song of Ice and Fire, facing out, and it's filling in most of the cube. But if you go ahead and move the box, because remember these cubes are like, I don't know, 13 by 13 or whatever I saw. I'm making them bigger as I go, right? So they're 12 by 12. Then I said 13 by 13. There's somewhere, that's my thing today, like between 10 and 15. There's somewhere between 10 and 15 inches. Just like my wall is somewhere between 10 and 15 feet. But anyway, again, this Song of Ice and Fire box, the starter box, almost completely fills this section. And it looks nice. It's got the art from Song of Ice and Fire. I've been playing the miniature game a lot lately, so it's nice to display it. But because the box is on its side, it means there's a huge amount of space or good amount of space behind the box in the Calyx cube. So if I pull the box out like it's a door, you can, and I'm seeing in the video and I'm doing this, I pulled the box out. You can now see that I've stored some things behind there. And in this case, I've actually stored, every miniature gamer has got a bunch of unpainted miniatures. These are some of my unpainted projects. Most of them are miniatures for the Song of Ice and Fire game, right? So I got the new War Mammoths just came out. So they're there in their box, still sealed. I got a bunch of Thin Warriors because I finally wanted to add them. And so I got those there. And then you can also see I've got a couple of boxes from Star Wars Legion in there because I also need to be working on those. And so I realized, and this is terrible, I realized I have no Star Wars board games. And this is a huge problem. I don't know how I've made it this long in my life and not had a Star Wars board game. I do play the Star Wars miniature game Legion, but that's weird. So on a side note, That's got to be fixed. So anyway, this is where I'm storing some of my latest projects. And I can just, again, so it's cooler than, I could have put a door there and have been a boring white door, but it's much cooler to be a Song of Ice and Fire, right? So that's how that works. Now, also you'll see here, similarly placing theming here. Another neat thing, again, using a door. A couple things in this picture I wanted to share with you. In the middle now, so now we've panned over to the 5x5 Calyx wall, right? So this thing is definitely dominates the room. It's what your eyes are drawn to you when you enter. And what's neat about it is, what I really like about Calyx, and another tip, there's no back on Calyx furniture, meaning that each of these cubes you see right through. Right. So you can see whatever's behind there. Now, remember I mentioned to you, my wife had painted the back wall of the room, this nice red color, and the rest of the room is beige, which means when you look through the Calyx, you get this cool red color kind of hiding back there, which is really neat. And you can see it here in this picture because I have, in this particular picture, I have a lot going on here. And I realized that I could bring together some things that I've collected over the years to match the themes of the games I'm displaying in this particular case. So on the left-hand side of this picture, you can see I've got a pirate ship model that my daughter gave me a few years ago. And to the right of that, you can see I've got Forgotten Waters, a game about seafaring and mostly pirates, quite frankly. But what's also cool, and again, here's another example of a game functioning as a door, because this Forgotten Waters game, I can go ahead and pull it out. Here we go, ready? I'm going to pull out this game. And when I pull it out, you'll see in the picture, there is more games behind it, but the games all match the theme. So what do I mean by that? Well, Forgotten Waters was right on the front, a co-op pirate game, right? Seafaring game. But right behind it, I've got Black Fleet, Merchant and Marauders, and Dead Man's Doubloons. Again, all more seafaring, piratey kinds of games, all next to the pirate ship model. So if someone's like, I feel like playing Merchant and Marauders, I don't have to guess where Merchant and Marauders is. I go right to the ship to the right. There's Forgotten Waters, and right behind it is Merchant and Marauders. What's also fun is I see myself potentially rotating some of these games and changing who's displayed in the front based on whatever the hotness is or what I feel like or whatever I want to do. So I like this idea that I can, so even though you have one game facing out and looking cool, it doesn't preclude you from having more games behind it, especially if they're slightly smaller game boxes. So I really like that a lot. You can see this here in my little video. So there's how I was kind of capturing, and this is what I really like about the Calyx thing that you really can't do with the box throne, which is you can't go ahead and, box throne's all wire shelves. So you can't display the ships. You can't display, games behind games. You can't really show off the box art. Like in this picture here, I just like how this looks. Now you might not like this, right? This may not be your bag, which is totally fine. But what I like about Calyx is, whatever you want. You want to stack this full of games and just throw their sides, do it. You just want to fill this thing full of your favorite. Let's say you're a tank modeler, or you build lots of ship models, or you build lots of miniatures. Fill them with that. I've got a little bit of everything. So I don't know if you saw my panning through earlier, but I have a Tiamat model right in the center top block. More about that in a second. You'll also notice down in the row below where the pirate ship is, there's a cowboy hat. And the cowboy hat I bought many years ago when I was really into Bang the Dice game. I bought a cheap, I don't know, it was like a $3, $5 cowboy hat from our friends at Myriad Games back then. And whenever we play Bang the Dice game or Bang the card game, the sheriff wears a cowboy hat. And so similarly, just like the Forgotten Waters in the ship, the cowboy hat is sitting on a pile of Western themed games down there. Bang Dice game there, Bang the Dice game is actually under the hat. Bang the card game is there to the right of it. Colt Express is there along with this expansion hiding behind it, as well as Western Legends. So lots of fun cowboy themed games right there by the cowboy hat. And I have a place to display / store my cowboy hat, which before would jam to the back of my closet somewhere. And half the time I would not have it to be ready to play with the game because I couldn't remember where I put it. Right. So again, just a really handy sort of, and I just like how it looks. Again, that's me. Your mileage may vary. So you can see here. Now, one of the things I wanted to pause on here is these top shelves. So what you might be thinking about, oh, by the way, there's Tiamat on the right-hand side there. So you can see this top centerpiece is showing off one of the Tiamat models I got. That's a non-IP infringing Tiamat from, I forgot who makes it now. But anyway, if you have questions about the multi-headed dragon model, let me know. I'll look it up. So the only problem with Calyx, and the big advantage Box Thrones has, is you may have heard me say several times, these cubes are about, I don't know, as I said, between 12 and 15 inches square. what do you do with the big games, especially the big old games like the classic coffin boxes that Fantasy Flight Games used to create, or anything crazy and big like Heroes of Land, Sea, and Air, or other wacky games like that? Well, I figured I would take a look at not putting all the Calyx panels in. So when you're building your Calyx, the system is designed to put every single divider into every single cube. But the way the assembly process works, it's actually pretty straightforward to leave one out. So as you can see here in this picture, I just, when normally you'd have by, two, let's call them 13 by 13 cubes, you could leave the divider out, and now you've got one 26 by 13 rectangle, right? And so in this space now, I can put the nice, big, wide games like in this picture. You can see I've got the old school Rune Wars, the big, long, wide Rune Wars before they redid it. I've got the old school StarCraft board game, the big, long coffin box. I've got the old school Fantasy Flight Marvel Heroes game, which again is too wide to fit into one of the smaller ones. And then I've even got the little Brood War expansion there. There's so much room in this that the coffin box from StarCraft can be there, and the Brood War expansion can be on its side so that everything's next to each other and ready to go in one spot. And there's even an inch left there too. So an even bigger game could fit. Now, a couple of tips if you're going to do this. I would strongly recommend to think about how the load is going to be throughout this structure when you choose which panels to leave out, because this piece of furniture is clearly designed with the intent that all panels will exist. And if you're going to be putting a lot of games in here, right, you want to make sure there's good structural integrity in this thing. Where I'm going with this is, if you take out every single center one of these things, I think the whole thing's going to be too flimsy. So I actually only took out two, and I took them out at the top. So there's really no load in the top of the shelves because, well, the only thing on top of that is whatever you put on top of the cabinet, which is, in my particular case, is a couple of pillow dice, D20 pillows, and a few pop figures. So there's nothing much up there. But at the bottom layer, the entire weight of all the games stored in this thing are coming down on the bottom. So I think it would have been a mistake to pull the centerpieces out of two cube areas on the bottom, right? Because you would have started having sagging and maybe worse. This way, I think you're much better off. So on the 5x5, I took them out of the top. Now, what's interesting is on the 2x4, I did take them out of the bottom, but that whole thing is leaning against another Calyx, and I've got some screws in there to keep it from sagging. So, but the good news is you can do this with Calyx, which I really like, to give yourself a lot more room. So that's how I handle that. And you'll see also that when I zoom in here, you'll see, I'm zooming in now in the video, you can see the peg holes that are left above Wolverine's head here. You can see the peg hole that's left because I didn't put that middle piece in. You could spackle it over, fill it in. I didn't bother, but you totally could. But that's the part I left out. So what's cool is you can just leave that panel out, and it's not that hard to do. And everything goes together just fine as well. So it's not a big deal to get that extra space. And that's what fixed the Calyx for me, to make it just as good as Boxer. Now you can see here that I did the same thing over here on the other side of the top. I also did it for my Star Trek games because Starfleet Captains, Star Trek Fleet Captains, and Zia, and some other games are really big. I do have some small games in this one if you're looking at the picture, but that's because they're all matching the theme. So I threw Space Cadets in there and some of the expansions. But basically, you can again see the holes that I left there for that particular one as well. So again, that's how I got the wide. So Calyx can handle most games. There's only a couple games it can't handle because they're just too, there's my Voltron, by the way, because they're just too deep. Now I'm going to pan back over here now. Let's talk a little bit about Box Throne, because this is a good segue into how I also like having Box Throne. So I decided to convert Box Throne for our miniature gaming friends out there. This is where I decided to use Box Throne to kind of leverage my miniature gaming part of my hobby. So the Calyx is handling pretty much all the board games, plus a little bit of storage behind some of the games for various miniaturing supplies. But for actual hobbying, this also has to double as my hobby room. I'm not showing my work desk, by the way, which is opposite of where all this filming is happening. So behind where the camera is my actual desk. And behind that is just some family pictures and a nice normal person wall. So I can be on a business call and no one knows that I'm sitting in a room full of board games. But on this wall over here, this little corner is the Box Throne. So now you can get a good view of Box Throne. Now I've modified this Box Throne slightly, and we'll talk about that in a second. I actually attached pegboard to the side of it, and I zip tied pegboard to the one of the sides of the Box Throne. But you'll see here, I got the wire racks. And by the way, I'm still working on this. So this is not optimized yet. So when you're looking at this picture, my box throne is definitely not optimized. But what you can see here is I've got all my games here. I'm going to pan around a little bit. You can see that I've got, actually, you can see there's the throne box there. That thing I was telling you, it's like 3 feet high and it's a metal square. You can see the wire racks. Now, one of the things I'm showing here in the box throne is Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea. Now, this is an interesting game because Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea will not fit, unfortunately, into Calyx at all because the box is so square high. It can't be on its side in one of the Calyx cubes, and it can't be on its back because it's also deeper than the Calyx is deep. So you can't actually get Heroes of Land, Sea, and Air into a Calyx thing, even the double wide Calyx ones. So there's a few rare games that don't fit in the Calyx. So these rare games will either, and this is where Box Throne has an edge, because you can see in my picture, Box Throne is very easily handling Heroes of Land, Sea, and Air. This is also where the double wide Box Throne stuff happens, where you can actually separate these columns even wider and have a long, wide rack. You can fit anything you want into Box Throne if you've got the budget for it and you like the style, because Box Throne looks a little more metally and a little more wiry than the Calyx. So it's a trade-off. But in my head, the way I'm going to handle this is the super weird games. I think I can store a few of them over here in Box Throne. And then I've also got my back room closet that I could put all the really weird games there too. But I think like 90% of my games can fit in the Calyx. So I'm feeling pretty code about that. And also there seems to be a trend for board game manufacturers to get away from the super large game boxes. So I think this is less of a thing, although Heroes of Land, Sea, and Air isn't that old. So that's sort of interesting. But I'm still optimizing this, like Summoner Wars is in here. That could be in a Calyx cube. So I just haven't really gone ahead and tweaked all this stuff. But what I wanted to show you guys here is how I'm handling the miniature stuff. So I actually have quite a bit of room here in this little corner to handle a lot of stuff related to miniatures. You can see here that where the thrones connect, there's a plastic sort of shelf in the middle of the thrones, and I'm using that for my paintbrushes and my mixing trays. And then you can see here, the other throne that's attached here, it's got a spot on it where I'm actually using it for my little painting desk. Now, it's not really a desk. It's actually just a little pod. It's just a little flat surface. But quite frankly, I don't put my legs under a desk when I paint. I kind of lean back and paint. I'm kind of a weird painter. So I don't need a desk to paint. So I just roll my desk chair over there and I'm ready to start painting. I've got a little mat there. As you can see, I got a Citadel mat. Below that, I've got a Privateer Press War Machine cutting surface. I'm not proud. I use everybody's stuff. I've got Citadel, paints. I've got Privateer Press paints. I've got everything. So you'll notice here that I actually custom cut some pegboard. Wasn't very hard with a circular saw to fit exactly into the side of the box throne. And that way I can easily stick things on there. What also is nice about the box throne that would not work on the Calyx, box throne is actually metal and it's ferromagnetic, meaning I can stick magnets to it. So you'll see one of my favorite things to do with all that flock is you can actually go buy magnetic spice containers, right? So for seasonings, like any kind of spice, salt or paprika, whatever you want. And a lot of people will put, a little metal thing on the inside of one of the cabinet doors in their kitchen. And then these spice racks are these spice containers are round. And you can see them in this picture here with a clear top so you can see the spice inside. And then the back of them's magnet. You stick it to inside your cabinet door. So you open your cabinet, excuse me, you open your cabinet and you just have all your spices right there looking at you. And you can see what's in them because of the clear top. These are fantastic for different kinds of flock. As you can see here, you can put some basing rocks in there. You can put in some gravel. You can put some ballast in there. You can put static grass in one. You can put the little tufts in another one. I've got 6 or 7 of these things. Whenever I see them, I buy them. And because box throne is metal, I can tack these things right on with their magnets. And now when I'm modeling or working on base, I can just look up and go, ooh, I would like that one, and just grab it, right? So that makes life very easy. So I like that. And the pegboard's great because I can stick my airbrush heads in there. I can stick my clippers up there on the pegboard. Any of the GW, I have the little figure holders handles for that. So everything's right there at my fingertips, which I'm loving too, and ready to go. And then also you'll see on the floor to the right, I think my camera's going to pan over there. I haven't hung my paints up yet. So for my paints, I have it's actually fingernail polish racks. You can get these things for like less than $20 on Amazon. They are, and they're exactly the right size to hold Citadel paints, Vallejo paints, and privateer press paints. They all work together. You can see in this picture here, I've got two of them. The one in the front is showing off Citadel and P3. And behind that, you can't see it, is a full set of Vallejo airbrush paints. Exact same racks. And what I'm going to do is, remember that closet I'm still trying to clean out? When that closet's clean out, it's in the basement and it's got those basement windows, so I can put a vent in there. So I'm going to move my airbrushing hood and my airbrushing station all into the closet, because I don't do it very often. But it should be good ventilation there. So that's going to go in there, which means I only need one paint rack here. And that's probably going to go on the wall. That's going to be the one thing I hang on the wall here. That's going to go on the wall to the right of this place. So there'll be the paint rack there on the wall to the right, which is an easy reach. And then this whole station here to get to it. So nail polish rack, fantastic for paints. Probably the cheapest thing you can get for paint storage. And then this box throne, I'm really loving it. The other thing I'm going to do with this box throne, I'm going to pan. I think I panned down here to show you. There's all these great, you can see the pegboard thing I've done there. So that's going on there. And you can see here in my video also, it's showing off the pegboard a little more. You can see I've got a paper towel rack there. There's my dragon. That's the dragon from Joan of Arc, by the way. That thing is freaking huge and it's an awesome model. I should do it a little more justice. I kind of half painted and stopped. Now here you can see I got some of the games I talked about earlier. Here's a Lancine Air. But what I want to do down below the brushes here, this is going to be where my project boxes go. So, most miniature gamers, I don't know if most miniature gamers do this. Everybody I know does this. I think I do this. Let's put it this way. I do this. I don't just have one painting project going on at a time. I wish I was disciplined enough to do that, but I'll start down one path, right? And then I'll get distracted by a different game, but then I'll come back to the other game again. And then I'll go to a third game, but then I'll come back to the second game. Then I'll come back to the first game. Then I'll get all caught up and I'll buy some new models and go back, things happen, right? So you're seeing here on the left-hand side, I've got a little rack, and that plastic thing on the left, that is an official box throne piece you can buy that goes on top of the wire racks. So you can put models there, but that thing's also stupid expensive. So I was like, I'm not going to buy more of those. However, on the right, these little black trays on the right, these are, and I think I've talked about these before on the show, these are actually jewelry trays for jewelry cases that fit miniatures perfectly. And what I've started doing is throwing a sheet of magnetic, basically unrollable magnetic sticky side paper, sheets of magnetic paper. I don't know. It's not paper, but you know what I mean? You stick it on the bottom of the thing, and then I attach a washer to each miniature, and then they stay down there. But these are my project boxes. So my thinking is I got a little box for, like, you can see I'm working on Warcaster there. So I got a box for Warcaster. I might have a box for the latest miniatures I'm working on for Star Wars Legion. And then, of course, I've got a tray over here. I'm going to go switch that to one of those boxes also for, Song of Ice and Fire. And what that lets me do is that's actually also how I'm transporting my models, with these same sort of trays. So I can just grab it if I'm half painted, but I need to use the models in a game or something. I can grab that tray and go. I can rearrange them with the current projects. And so I'm thinking that that's how I'll use the wire trays down here, is this will be the various miniature projects that I'm currently working on as well. So there you have it. That is my box throne section. You can see High Heavens down there at the bottom. That really should be in the other box, but that's a great game too. So yeah. Oh, by the way, bonus points. This cardboard you're looking at here. So when you get IKEA furniture, there's some really cool, thick, corrugated cardboard that's used for packing material. Save it. You'll see here, I've actually got 3 of these nice thick ones. I save this all the time for spray painting models. Put some of that, because remember, I put washers on all my miniatures. So what I'll do is I'll take some of that sticky magnetic tape and I'll stick it on this, and then I'll just put the miniature with washers right on there to stay. And you can just hold this piece of cardboard and spray paint it with primer when you're priming your models, and they don't fall off. And it's nice and thick, so they don't get too flimsy and get bend when you get a whole unit or two on there, or a war jack or something big. So I love these little things. And I feel pretty good because I'm reusing everything that came. I'm not throwing as much cardboard away as it could be. So that's everything. That's how I've been using and working to organize my crazy little game room here. I hope you guys found this to be interesting and useful. I really enjoyed doing this with my daughter. It was a fun family project, and not to get too hokey about this, although I will. I'm just flipping through the video here to show you guys the big picture here again on this stuff, but I guess I can't get, there we go. That's a nice picture. Oh, I didn't mention earlier, I even got a pod here for all my D&D books as well in the Calyx. So there's actually one Calyx cube. It's just the spines of my whole D&D book collection, which is handy because that particular cube is within arm's reach of my desk. My desk is actually sort of to the right and behind this picture. So when I'm playing online now, which is what I do most time at Roll20, I can reach over there and grab all those books also. So you can get things exactly where you want. So I have to say, I had a great time doing this. I'm really proud. I'm proud of it, but I'm also pleased with it. It does make the room feel really nice. And I'm looking forward to rotating through. Right now, behind a lot of these boxes is just some not well-used space. So I've still got to organize it. I still got to figure out the closet and a lot of other work to do. But it was a great project to do with my daughter. It was a great bonding experience. And now, even though she's out of the house and out on her own, doing her own thing, it was like she left us a little going away present, which is really pretty sweet. I always got a cool office, and I've got a cool office. But better than just being an office, it's also an amazing way to show off my board game collection and my miniature collection. And dangerously gives me an excuse to collect more board games. Let's be honest, that's what it's really all about. All right, well, thanks for listening, everybody. I hope you found this episode enjoyable, and we'll see you next time on the D6 Generation.
Achievement unlocked. You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by emailing us at info@d6generation.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. Thanks for listening, and happy gaming.